This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to episode number 82 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I'm your host, Vito, Jerome Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and partner in crime, that is the Doc, from Doc and Jock, John Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, is it really snowing out there today as we're recording this podcast?
Isn't that sad?
Man, it's weird to see that there's snow on the ground in the middle of March. Man, I recall when I used to play tennis, we used to start practicing March 1st, and the games would start, the matchups would start in high school around the time of like March 20th into April, and to see snow on the ground as we're talking, man, do you feel like it's baseball weather?
It's depressing seeing this, and then yesterday, Monday of this week, and Tuesday of this week, we had 2 straight days where it was snowing. Little snow flurries at least. Luckily, Doc, for you and I, people driving out there in the Metro Detroit area, I think throughout a lot of the state of Michigan, wet snow, though, so the roads were fine for the most part. Now, how about for you, though, in the morning, actually, on Monday?
You know, the roads were pretty good in terms of the main roads. Like always, the subdivisions are terrible. They don't get to them, and they're a little bit slippery getting out of the sub into the main roads. But for the most part, if you drove conservatively and you don't drive like an idiot, it was okay for me. I didn't have any real problems, no real delays. Got here on time and had some fun, and then got to go enjoy, you know, the parts of my birthday weekend, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later on in a different podcast. But I enjoyed myself over the last weekend. And Vito, I'm looking forward to hearing your sense of what's been going on with the Detroit Tigers. Always, as a week progresses, there's always a lot of juicy details, and I'm wondering what you've been thinking about. What have you been chomping on in terms of the Detroit Tigers?
Verlander was very sharp on Monday in his spring outing, and best outing from what I've been hearing of the spring from Justin Verlander, big time, in a tie against the Nationals. Once again, we talked about it for a while with Dominic, my brother, too, was a guest on episode 81 last week of Tigers Talk. We talked about how, really, spring training results, wins and losses, doesn't matter. Now, the thing is, or don't matter, the thing is that the Tigers have racked up a lot of losses throughout the course of this spring training. But you can always date back to the Lions. Exhibition and spring training results don't matter, Doc, and we saw it with the Lions. When they went 4-0 in exhibition, then went 0-16. So we want to see performances out of a guy like Justin Verlander being solid. And we saw that. And the most solid outing of the spring from Justin Verlander on this past Monday against the Washington Nationals. So that is a good result, something you want to see and something you can take something out of, Doc.
Well, when looking at Justin Verlander, the good thing is he's getting outs, he's mixing up his pitches. But the thing is this is what we get from Justin Verlander. You get some really solid performances, and then you get some performances where they're not so great. And I think that's what you're going to get this year. I do believe he'll work into some things. He'll be a valuable asset, but the question you always got to ask is he worth the $28 million that he's going to be paid this year? Are you going to be, going to get 15 to 18 wins from him? Is that enough, do you think, for Justin Verlander to perform? That's the numbers you expect from him. So his contract obviously is a little bit, inhibiting in terms of the Tigers, but if you're looking at a squad that's looking at cut payroll. But I think he's a good leader. I think he's a good example for the rest of the guys. He's a glue guy, and I expect that if he stays healthy, he should do some things. But the tough part is you're going to see what you saw last year. You're going to see some world-class performances where he strikes out a lot of guys and his stuff is grooving, and then you're going to see situations where people can catch up to his fastball because he is over-reliant upon it. People will tag him if he doesn't locate his pitches and get guys out, and that's just what you've seen before. So nothing really new in terms of what I've seen from Justin Verlander.
Now, his fastball was hitting 94 to 96 Monday, and that's solid. That's what you want out of JV. That's what he can give you. So he's a strikeout artist still, and that's what he really provides to you as the ace of the Tigers' pitching rotation. Thing is, the concern is when he's not going right, he will leave some pitches out over the middle of the plate, and that leads to home runs. And a lot of home runs were given up by Justin Verlander last season. The thing is, I believe it was 25-plus bombs he gave up in 2016. Now, that's the concern out of Justin Verlander. Really, the only concern is that when he gives up runs, he gives them up via the home run variety. And let's say if he allows a walk or allows a hit or two and allows, 1 or 2 guys to get on base, well, then If he allows the big shot to somebody coming up after those two guys get on base, well, then it's a 3-run jack he's giving up. So the runs tally up via, the 2-3-run home run shots. It seems like, though, last year in JV's defense, he gave up the solo home runs, and that was it. So that's a concern a little bit because we saw him avoid trouble with that last year. Can he continue to avoid that, the 2- and 3-run home runs being permitted from him? If he avoids that, then once again, his ERA will be very, very solid, and he will once again be, in my opinion, an American League Cy Young candidate.
Justin Verlander, you need him to perform. You obviously need him at the top of the rotation. And, and looking at the other guys, obviously the struggles of Anibal Sanchez continue. You read reports that he was, desperate and throwing bullpen work with Brad Ausmus. But Pelfrey's done a little bit better. He had a relief outing where I think he went 3 innings, got 9 guys out, had a better performance. So it's one of those things where those 3 guys, many people, after we recorded the last episode, were just like cut ties. They were ready too. They were saying you need to part ways with those 3 guys, Mark Lowe, Pelfrey, and Anibal Sanchez. So, they didn't do it. They're still working on things. So the contracts, you obviously note, are probably prohibiting the Detroit Tigers from making moves in those areas. But you got to go into the season with a little bit of hope that Sanchez, Pelfrey, and Mark Lowe will give you something. And it's one of those things where you go, ooh, can they? Not likely. But I did want to bring up, what did we talk about last week regarding the World Baseball Classic and what our hopes were? What did the doc spew in terms of talking about why I wasn't really for the World Baseball Classic?
Well, you're just not interested in the other teams and what they bring, and it's not intriguing enough. You wouldn't watch it unless what, though? I mean, I know we don't like that those superstars aren't playing for Team USA, but go back to your reasoning. What did you talk about then?
I didn't want none of my guys that I pay hard-earned money to go watch to get hurt.
You're going to bring up K-Rod, right?
And what happened?
Yep.
Everyone's a little bit concerned. Now, he's poo-pooing it. He's not saying, and maybe you'll give me the update because I haven't really followed up with it, but K-Rod, didn't he kind of tweak his groin a little bit or had a little bit of a nick up while he was performing out there at the World Baseball Classic? And you go, okay, the guy that's looking to be the Detroit Tigers closer, and he's already been nicked up playing in the World Baseball Classic. That's why I said thumbs down, and I'm not really into it.
Have you watched any of it yet?
Nope, not a thing. I understand potentially people were griping about Jim Leyland's use of Andrew Miller at certain times, not going to him in the first game. I understood that the United States defeated Canada, eliminating
Murdered
them.
Canada to eliminate Canada.
There you
yep.
go.
It was an easy victory against Canada.
But people, I think, were still criticizing Jim Leyland and his use of the bullpen.
He's getting criticized once again. It must be great for him to be a skipper again, to hear all the criticisms. And I loved seeing Nolan Arenado go deep against Canada. That was on Sunday, and they blew out Canada, I believe, 8-0. But there was a game in which Venezuela, led by Miguel Cabrera and star sluggers like that, were shut out 11-0 in one of the first round games. And that was ugly. But people, continue to criticize Jim Leyland because you know what? They have nothing better to do. They feel empowered by, being behind their computer, being on Twitter. They can voice their opinion and nobody will actually find out who that guy is or, go after that person and ask, well, did you really go there and see, up close and personal? Or have you had any experience managing yourself? But people feel empowered, and they feel like they have the right, and they do, to criticize Jim Leyland whenever, and any manager or ball player. Thing is, in the World Baseball Classic, come on, man. And the U.S. still did solid over the weekend, winning its first game against Colombia, losing against the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic, by the way, was down, came back and won that game against the U.S. And that's where Leyland came under some fire for his using of the bullpen. And obviously, now it's being labeled as a misusage of the pen in that game on Saturday, which my brother and we watched, not from the start until the end, but we watched the beginning. We saw a good game there from what we saw, and we didn't see, though, the Dominican Republic come back. We found out later on, but luckily the U.S. won against Canada, it advanced to the next round, and Team USA has done all right so far. And the pitching has been really solid, by the way, too. Chris Archer, Danny Duffy, and the bats have gotten going, and I think the bats will be there, as we talked about last week. And the pen, most likely, outside of maybe a misusage of a pen arm here and there by Jim Leyland, don't want to throw him under the bus, but I think the U.S. as a whole most likely will be there. So, and if the bats are hitting, the U.S. can contend with anybody. And if you were looking at the favorites from the start, before the World Baseball Classic this year even started, the U.S. was actually favored over the likes of the Dominican Republic and Mexico and Venezuela, all these teams that in the past, have had at least the better talent, but the U.S. as a squad has rounded out very nicely. And because of that, as we talked about last week, you know what? The U.S. is a team to watch out for that can actually win it all. And obviously, they got the skipper, I think, to win it all with, too. But I digress now. That was my conversation about Team USA.
What happened with K-Rod?
K-Rod, talking about him, I guess he's fine. Nothing major, nothing severe, so nothing to worry about. And as Aaron Rodgers once or now multiple times has famously said, just relax. RELAX, relax, Doc, and Tigers fans out there.
He'll be back throwing meatballs and trying to get everybody out with his 85-mile-an-hour curveball?
Throwing meatballs and giving up bombs probably in the ninth inning when he shouldn't be, but maybe he won't be the closer by the end of the season because of the emergence of somebody else, such as Joe Jimenez.
Now,
because of Bruce Rondon.
I'm being facetious. He did a pretty good job his first year. I think maybe an underrated job. He came in and, based upon what we saw in previous years, he did a pretty good job. I mean, he's definitely an upgrade over a crappy Joe Nathan.
Well, God, I mean, anybody would have been in. How many bad closer signings have they made? I bet you don't even remember. I know you were asking me about bad free agent signings by the Tigers that they made, throughout the last, 10, 15 years. Well, you can label Troy Percival. He was a closer in his prime with the Halos, won a World Series with the Halos. The Tigers signed him. He did nothing with the Tigers. Fernando Vina. But back to the closer conversation, Jose Valverde towards the end was irrelevant. And really their best relief pitcher signing in recent memory was Joaquin Benoit, who became the closer, was the eighth inning specialist, and then became the closer because of struggles of guys like Jose Valverde. Turned out to be all right, Benoit, and really worth the contract. A guy that I wanted to see the Tigers get back after he left. And he went to the Padres, and I guess he got some more money. The Tigers weren't totally interested in re-signing him at the time. But then they might have regretted it when they looked at their pen. And even over the course of the last season or two, when it hasn't been solid, and really it hasn't been even when they had Benoit as their closer. Remember, he's the one that pitched against the Red Sox, and you had him and Smiley at the back end of the pen, two solid relief pitchers, and they still couldn't limit Big Papi and the Red Sox. And remember, obviously, they lost that series to the Bo Sox in 2013 in the ALCS, when the Tigers looked like they were prime and ready to get to the World Series and to win it all for the first time since 1984. So they've had a bullpen like that, and still it hasn't been good enough. But my conversation piece was about the lack of finding success with closer signings. Troy Percival, later Valverde, Joe Nathan. And K-Rod, though, wasn't the worst acquisition made by the Tigers. K-Rod actually has turned out to be all right. In his first year, he was solid. Not great, not overpowering stuff. Throws, 84 to 86, maybe 85 to 87 miles per hour, 85 to 88. I would say more about 87. So you're not going to get anything of high velocity out of him and overpowering stuff. But he still will strike you out because of his change piece. A pitch like that is a nice pitch from him. A guy that really you can't label as an aging vet yet. And if he doesn't become an aging vet this season, the back end of their pen might be better than expected. And if Rondon is a solid eighth inning guy, as I see him getting that job and performing very adequately in that role throughout the season too, Doc.
Well, listen, if we can get anything above what we saw with some of those relievers that you talked about, and it's just collectively the bullpen, I mean, literally in the course of the time, Vito, that we've had this project, we've named the bullpen. We called them, I think, I forget the names off the top of my head, but...
Well, complete garbage, but we've had some very good descriptions and all that about the bullpen in the past, and they've been a dumpster fire collectively. They really have been.
One of the names was the Dead Arm Gang.
Now, who actually perfected that slogan? Or
I think our friend Steve Chimenti was one of the first that said you guys should name the bullpen, or maybe he caught on after the first one and was like, continue, name this bullpen. And we just, over the course of the year, maybe under 10 times, we just tweet out a GIF of dumpster fire, because they just are a team that, when you look at it, has yet to solidify entirely their bullpen. And maybe with hope, we've seen that the Detroit Lions have solidified the offensive line. Maybe at some point they will realize it's just about the bullpen, baby. Just go out there and talk about it, repair it, fix it, and we'll have an opportunity to really win some more ball games. But it's good to see so far. Your impressions of spring training are that the Tigers are really struggling a little bit to win the games, but the little things they're working on in terms of improving defense, getting the starters innings, and really showcasing some things. But something that many people are noticing, and in the competition for center field, is that you're not really showcasing the guy that should probably be the winner and the front runner. And maybe after the break, I'll tell you who the player is that's not really getting much time out there. and maybe we'll take a quick timeout, come back on the Tigers Talk podcast, and talk about a player that I think should be playing more, and I'm surprised that he's not.
Well, Mikey Matuk, by the way, has an average that is dismal, way below the Mendoza line. He hasn't hit at all. He hasn't performed. With that being said, good enough to get that starting center field job. And we'll be right back, Doc, after this quick commercial break on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company.
Doc here for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you for your continued support and allowing us to keep the studio lights on, the microphones hot here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you like what you're listening to, you like the variety of podcasts that you hear, definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. That's the easiest way to support us. You get all the news from the network. You can check out the work from Vito, myself, all the guys that are putting out great content almost each and every day. And hey, if you're prone to shop online, click through that Amazon banner, go about your business, shop, and then when you're on that Amazon page, just bookmark it. Anytime at all that you make an online purchase, it kicks us back a little something and helps us keep this project going. We've been going strong since 2013, and that's been largely due to the support of our supporters, and we greatly appreciate it. DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
And Doc, I was talking before the break about Benoit too. Did you know? Here's a really good trivia question, or just something to know here. Before that grand slam he gave up to Big Papi Ortiz in the 2013 ALCS, Big Papi was held without an extra base hit in 27 career plate appearances against Benoit. A nice little factoid right there. Now, the Tigers at that point, Doc, could hit. Didn't have many voids in their lineup. Now, they do this year big time in center field, and you wanted to discuss that fully here.
No, I just want to know that, okay, it's supposed to be a competition, but everybody's kind of pointing out, and I'm noticing too that, Jacoby Jones is not getting as many at-bats, and my thinking is, if you give him an opportunity to see what he does over the course of the spring, you said it, and you've observed it, Mikey Matuk stinks. And that's a guy that you don't think is going to win the competition. Earlier in earlier editions of the podcast, we said that nobody's really winning the job. It looks like it might be a selection of who doesn't suck the least. But many people are observing and looking at Jacoby Jones isn't getting enough at-bats. Let the guy play every single day for the next 2 weeks and see what he produces. And I do believe if you let him have an opportunity to bat, and then also improve upon his defense, that's probably going to be the guy that you would expect to win the job. But if he's playing sporadically and you're going to play him once every 5 days, how on earth is he going to get any rhythm and develop anything at all in order to win this job?
But you know what they view him as a guy that's a project right now in center field. He can't play it adequately with the glove. So they don't view that he's going to get better this spring and good enough to start come opening day. That's why they're not giving him a lot of appearances out there or the necessary ABs and reps, just to lay it out simply, but to get better and get good enough to start come opening day. That's how I'm viewing it right now.
And I could be wrong. He might not win the job, but don't you think then Jacoby Jones sucks the least?
Well,
so you see Matuk's numbers.
I think they still view Tyler Collins as the guy to start because he has the best bat. He has a fourth outfielder bat. Thing is, in this competition between him, Jacoby Jones, Matuk, those three guys right now, the best batter of those three is Tyler Collins. And it's sad but true, he might be the best batter by far. That's how bad those guys are at the plate right now. Jones strikes out way too much. Matuk can't hit for average to save his life. And I don't think Jones can either over the course of a full season. And they realize that, and they know he's not ready, Doc.
Okay, are you ready to laugh? So it's one of those things where I think Jacoby Jones probably could earn the job if given the opportunity. So we'll wait and see. But if Tyler Collins is the starter, my goodness. But so as we were
I don't want it either. There's a dumpster fire right there potentially with him in center field.
Exactly. So as I was perusing Major League Baseball and some rumors, come across the Detroit News, and I read this headline. Romine's new swing gets big results so far for the Tigers. And I want to read you these quotes and try not to laugh right into the mic because it's very funny. So there's an article by Chris McCoskey, and he talks about, Andrew Romine's numbers and things like that. He's doing a good job in spring training. I guess he's worked on his swing. And
good for him.
And he's been producing. So here are the quotes from manager Brad Ausmus. It's just one of those things when you read it and you go, really? Come on now. And he goes, people don't understand, he said before the game on Tuesday. There are so many numbers out there in today's game. OPS, ERA+, all that stuff. But guys like Romine can be the difference between a winning team and a non-winning team and a losing team.
No, you didn't win last year with them on the roster either, Brett Ausmus.
They can do so much, and they give the manager a lot of flexibility in terms of resting players, pinch running for players, defending for players. He's an insurance policy late in games if something were to happen to any of the position players, and he just calls them a huge asset. Now, I guess
he is as a utility guy when you break it down that way, but when you consider him a starter, he's not an asset. He can't really field that position either. He's an infielder.
Exactly. Just one of those things where, I understand that there's value in having role players, but when you have a team full of them or you don't have enough guys that can do things, don't you think, though, that you could find a better role player than Andrew Romine? You can upgrade that position. That's the part people saying is that, okay, Andrew Romine doing some things. He's working on his swing. I guess he wants to be a valued utility guy, a guy that can be inserted all over the field. I think you can go out there and find an above-average utility guy. Really, that's what he's talking about in terms of the fact that you got, Andrew Romine. Is this guy the next Don Kelly? Andrew Romine?
And now they have internal options, too, with Omar Infante, a guy that can play out there in center field maybe as well, has done so in the past. And the thing is, he's been an all-star before. Romine's never been an all-star. Now, Infante made it as a utility guy with the Atlanta Braves. And you know what? Was he really an all-star when he made the all-star team? No, but this is a guy that can play all over the infield like Romine. And like I said, play center field, I think, adequately most of the time. And maybe Romine can do that, but with his bat and lack of really sufficient knowledge, I think, of judging fly balls out there in center field and covering spacious ground at Comerica Park in that position, Romine is not in the conversation to start. And really even to back up the starting center fielder. And he might get more reps as the season progresses if the guys that get the early reps struggle off the bat and at the plate specifically. If those guys, really do that to start the season, well, then you might see Romine getting some reps out there. But there probably are better guys that can perform in that utility role, including Omar Infante, possibly. A guy that has done better than Romine in the past. Now, in recent memory, they're probably equal, or maybe Infante hasn't performed as well as Romine. But that's only in recent memory, and maybe Infante really surprises the guys, surprises the team this year and gets onto the roster. And once he does, maybe he outperforms Romine. And then Romine maybe is viewed as not being a guy that's needed on the roster, Doc.
So you're saying, similar to me, is that he's probably expendable. He is.
You can find somebody else such as Infante, once again, on your own roster who was brought in on a minor league deal. So very affordable because of that. Romine is too, by the way. He's got a contract on the cheap. But when you compare, it's not that big of a difference between Romine, what you get out of him offensively specifically, and what you get out of Infante offensively specifically. So, yeah, you are definitely right, Doc. You're onto something right there. And right now it's spring training. The manager, it's coach speak. The manager is going to pub up all his players to make them sound better than they really are, such as what he's doing with Andrew Romine, who he said is a valuable asset to building a winning team or to a team that does win. Well, the thing is, the Tigers have had Andy Romine since 2014. Have they won anything of significance? Well, they made the playoffs in 2014, were dismal in 2015, missed out on the postseason last season with Andrew Romine on the roster. So they haven't been a winner with Romine on the roster as of yet. So what is going to change now? Romine's not going to get any better, not significantly at least, to where he becomes an all-star slugger at any position. So he's a very adequate utility infielder, maybe a guy that can spot start in center field, but is he essential to building a winning ball club and to the Tigers winning in 2017 specifically? I'm going to say no on that, Doc. And right now, I think we've seen this more and more out of Brett Ausmus, and that he's actually been critical of his arms more and more than he has been during the regular season when guys like Anibal Sanchez and Mike Pelfrey have struggled and Mark Lowe out of the pen. And now he's finally being critical of all these guys and their struggles, calling them out on the carpet. The thing is, why wasn't he doing this during the regular season last year or the year before with Sanchez when he struggled the year before and last season? So in 2015 and 2016, I'm talking about for Sanchez last year with Pelfrey and with Mark Lowe. And now there is a decision. When you look at the three guys, the easiest guy to get rid of, Doc, is going to be Mark Lowe. He's got the cheapest contract, and he's just a relief arm. You need starting pitching depth. I know you need bullpen depth too, but you can find bullpen arms a little bit more easily. They're kind of diamonds in the rough. So maybe a guy emerges from AAA this year too, really performs well at AAA Toledo, that means, and then comes up to the big league club and then can fill a role in the pen. Then Mark Lowe did very dismally last year. So I think Lowe is very, I know we said Romine is expendable. Yes, utility guys like that are expendable. And I think a guy like Mark Lowe, who's not very valuable at this point, I think he's very expendable too. And another point to my discussion, Doc, and maybe you can add to this too, is that I think Brett Ausmus should have been critical of these guys a lot earlier. during the regular season last year? Where was this negativity expressed by Brad Ausmus, the skipper of the Tigers, when they were struggling, Pelfrey and Sanchez last year? I would have liked to have seen that out of Brad Ausmus last year, and he never really showed that big time, Doc, if at all.
Maybe he is turning over a new leaf, maybe trying to find a little bit more of a way to motivate the fellas. And hey, if that's what it's going to take, maybe to publicly say some things and maybe put that out there a little bit more. But then, you flip it around and you say, well, maybe, then the locker room will turn against him. And I think the saving grace that kept him in his job was that he's a player's manager. So it's kind of interesting that he's flip-flopping, but you know what? It might be a sign that there's a manager, managing for the Detroit Tigers that might be feeling the pressure a little bit. And when you feel the pressure, you might change your natural personality. And, I know he hears that people talk about him being too laid back, and he hears that people say that he's not a fiery manager, and he goes out there and he sees what other managers are doing. But in essence, he's not saying anything really profound, extraordinary, anything that's going to really move the needle significantly. Yeah, he's tired of the fact that he's got players in the bullpen that everybody knows aren't efficient. And he knows that, he's verbalizing that there are some players that he needs more from. So, of course, you go out there, now it's just public versus private. But in essence, what we need from Brad Ausmus is game in, game out, for us not to be talking about the decisions that he's making being statistically wrong. That's the key, is that people nowadays have the ability, and I know it's hard in-game to manage, but after the fact, many people are dissecting his moves, and they're looking at, statistically speaking, when we put it into the computer, crunch out all the numbers and say, hey, in a new era of math where everybody's looking to explore and utilize advanced numbers and sabermetrics, you got to be able to make decisions that are sabermetrically correct, because in essence, that tells you and that will dictate to you what will be successful on the baseball field. And more people are noticing that decisions that Brad Ausmus makes aren't statistically correct more often than not. And so when you look at it, he can come out and he can be fiery. That'd be great. He can go out there and slam things into the home plate. That'll win the press conference for the day, and that'll, garner favor. But in order for him to get the Detroit Tigers above the hump, he's going to have to do some extraordinary things himself as a manager. Push the right buttons, get guys into the lineup, and take them out when needed. I just don't think he's the right puppet master to pull the strings. I think he pulls the strings, and he pulls the wrong ones. Then he goes to pull them back, and when he comes to the media and says, I'm not going to use this guy for a four-out save, boom, the next day, he's coming in for a 4-out save.
It makes no sense. There's no logic. And we need a real manager. Maybe we finally find that in Brad Ausmus this year more often. Thing is, I think he's been laid out to fail. He's a lame duck manager because the team isn't maybe as equipped to win. And now the front office knows that and wants to get him fired. So the team performing lackluster in that fashion more often than not and finishing, let's say, sub 500 or at least out of the playoffs for another season, which would be a third straight campaign of missing the playoffs. He would have to be fired, and I think he would be at that point. But that's a discussion. We've talked about that ad nauseum. We will as the season progresses, too. Wanted to get to Jordan Zimmermann, too, who had a stinky recent outing last Friday against the Toronto Blue Jays. And a lackluster outing like that out of J-Zim is noteworthy to me, much more than Sanchez or Pelfrey struggling, who I don't care about, who I don't see making the big league club or making much of a contribution to the big league club this season, if even one of the two makes it, or both. Zimmermann, though, is a vital member of that starting rotation, a guy that could be your number two when he's very well healthy and really going right, that is, Doc. So for me, that is very concerning, what the Tigers got out of him last Friday, which, like I said, he got rocked by the Blue Jays. A bad sign, potentially, of things to come. And now the Tigers, you know what? They have to be leery. And I think we are, as fans anyways, leery about what the Tigers will get out of him in 2017, Doc, to say the least.
Vito, no doubt about it. I think you're right, but I think it's one of those things where he needs more outings. We need more of a sample size to determine what he's got. It's going to be tough because, he's going to be a pitcher that's going to be scrutinized. We're going to be looking at him. He's got to locate his fastball. He's got to be able to get guys out. And a team like Toronto that many people view as a solid offensive club, you're going to need to go out there and handle your business. And can Jordan Zimmermann do that? I think similar to Justin Verlander, I really think that you really just need him to be complimentary. You need him to go out there and probably go in the neighborhood of like 14 wins. You need him to eat up some innings and just got to keep the team in the game. That's really what you need because, I don't know, maybe you can hope that when Jordan Zimmermann goes out there, the offense picks up and he wins games like 7-5, 7-4, and you hope that he doesn't cost you too many games. But I think he's a gamer. Don't you get a sense that this is a guy that's a warrior type that will battle and try to do anything he can to get back on the field and to help this team win? Or do you think that his contract will be an albatross and it's going to be flushed down the toilet, all the funds that we give him?
I think it'll be an albatross because I don't see him ever being a top flight arm in the starting rotation once again. Now, can he be a gamer? Yeah, but you know what? So can Mike Pelfrey.
So
there's a negative connotation or bad mentality to consider when saying that somebody's a gamer, too, because a guy that's a gamer doesn't have to be a good starting pitcher. I mean, Ryan Dempster, who's been bombed when Canada was playing, now is out of the World Baseball Classic. He's been a gamer, too, in the past, not efficient, though, as a starting arm. So it's a bad label, I think, to label somebody with, because it doesn't say too much about their attributes, really, their real attributes and skill set as a starting pitcher, such as Jordan Zimmermann, which is what you're doing with him by labeling him as a gamer, too.
So are you willing to maybe put that to pen and write that? Jordan Zimmermann will be an albatross?
Well, I'm saying for the money that he's making, I think he could be a solid number 3, number 4. But as a top flight option, as a number 2 or number 1, because he won't be a number 1 or number 2, not worthy of that contract because he won't be productive as a number 1 or number 2 in the Tigers rotation. So you can print that all day long, baby. You can take it to the bank.
Okay,
tweet it out.
Yeah, I think
I'll own it.
Hey, if you're willing to say that, I think you should pen something and put it to paper, and let's see more details as to why you think he'll be an albatross. But I think that's a very good take, and it's one of those things where we have to hope a lot of things with the Detroit Tigers go well, and you have to hope that not a lot of players get hurt in the World Baseball Classic, and you have to hope that they come out strong. You have to hope that everybody kind of functions as a unit and things like that, and it's a lot of hope for the Detroit Tigers.
A lot of hoping we have to do, and the Tigers faithful has to do, and the Tigers club, the front office has to do about this team and whether or not it will perform adequately enough to get into the postseason. Now, really quick, by the way, Jordan Zimmermann in that outing last Friday against the Blue Jays, 5 earned runs in an inning and a third. So very inefficient with that being said. And I don't think he'll be effective all the time in 2017. Sad but true about Jordan Zimmermann. And that's a reason, probably a vital reason why they could miss out and why I see the Tigers missing out on the playoffs right now in 2017, Doc.
Jordan Zimmermann is an albatross. That's what I'm going to take away from
an
this
albatross,
podcast.
Baby. As a guy being paid to be a number 1 or number 2 in the Tigers rotation. Now, Verlander, how about a little bit of projections here? Little Big Vito's over-under to end this week's podcast, Doc. How about that?
Hit me up.
Okay, so Verlander, projected by Baseball Prospectus right now to finish with a 3.79 ERA and a record of 12-10.
Ooh.
Now, I say over 12 wins, but they might be saying under because of the fact, or, only 12 wins because of the fact, Doc, that the Tigers don't seem to be as maybe competitive as they were last year. They won 86, but I guess you could say only 86 because they missed out on the playoffs. So, if they finish with 79 to 83 wins, which I kind of see as tops right now, as I've said numerous times on this podcast, that 83 wins is kind of their, I think, ceiling right now. So if they do that, Verlander probably does finish with less wins than he did last year. And now I'm going to give to you over under 15 wins for Justin Verlander in 2017, Doc.
Solid, Vito. I'm going to go under, right around 14. He maybe hit a push. I know a lot of your guests like to say even.
Even, and don't give me an over or under, yeah.
I like 13 wins. I don't know why that number is entering my mind, but 13 wins for Justin Verlander.
And now how about the ERA? 3.79 from Baseball Prospectus. Over or under that ERA, Doc?
Over. It'll be in the neighborhood of 4.01.
Wow, that's kind of bold. Your first real bold prediction in a long time. Now, why are you being that bold of JV's ERA?
Well, because of the fact they play in the American League, and they're playing in the American League Central where there's some big boppers. They're going to play Cleveland 18 times, and you're going to be in situations where you got to play teams like Toronto. You got to play teams like Houston. You got to play teams out in the West. You got to play Boston. You got to play the Yankees. So, and I think this year you're going to see what we saw a lot last year. People are going to ding him around. They're going to catch up to his fastball, and early on, he may, like I said, he may have a similar pattern that he had last year, but I do think that major league hitters can catch up now to his fastball. And if a guy like Justin Verlander can master other pitches and get guys out with it, then hey, then you have an opportunity. But I think that we're going away from the fastball, and I don't think that, consistently he'll get out guys because, unfortunately, there are guys that love to hit fastballs, and they can mash the hell out of the baseball. So if he can be creative and mix in other pitches, and he can go out there and dominate, then he'll have an opportunity. But if he's over-reliant on the same fastball and stubborn with it, I think people will hit him.
Well, Doc, and remember, the Twins kept Brian Dozier. He can hit home runs, at a premium rate. Jose Abreu is still on the White Sox as of right now. Guys like that are still around in the American League Central. Eric Hosmer of the KC Royals. The Indians adding Edwin Encarnacion. Michael Brantley probably going to come back and be healthy. Guys that can hit for power. And Verlander has given up the home runs in the past. So I'm going to say for Verlander, that's why you could see his ERA creeping above 3.79 and being closer to 4 as you're expecting right now. And I think another big Vito's over-under really quick to end the podcast, Doc, and to really end the podcast. Over or under 20 bombs given up by JV in 2017.
Under.
I think fair to say
17.
over. With all those big boppers in the AL Central?
Possible, but I'm going to go 17, 18.
Okay, fair enough, Doc. I'll let you go with that. I don't think it'll happen, but hey, we agree to disagree. So we do a lot on Tigers Talk on a weekly basis. And that concludes episode number 82 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. For the Doc, John Macaroon, I am Vito Jerome Chirco signing off, and we'll talk to you again next week. God bless. Goodbye.